August 15 next year will mark 75 years of freedom for India from the British rule, and to celebrate these milestones, the central government has proposed several programs and events for the occasion. The central will be inaugurating the curtain raiser activities of Azadi ka Amrit Mahostav or India at 75 on Friday, March 12, exactly 75 weeks prior to August 15, 2022. The Prime Minister asserted that Azadi Amrit Mahotsav means elixir of energy of independence. It means elixir of inspirations of the warriors of freedom struggle, elixir of new ideas and pledges, and nectar of Atmanirbhar Bharat. By 1857, 100 years after since the Battle of Plassey, the East India Company controlled almost the whole India. Almost all were unhappy with the unfair British rule. This led to a revolt by angry Indians. This is known in history as Revolt of 1857. The discontent among the Indian rulers, farmers and weavers also spread to the Indian soldiers. They were paid much less compared to the British soldiers. They were denied higher posts, also which were only reserved for the British soldiers. The Indian Army soldiers were given the rank of a sepoy in the British Army. However, things became worse with the introduction of the Enfield rifle in the army. It was rumored that cartridges used in the rifles were greased with animal fat which had to be bitten off. This hurt the religious sentiments of both Hindus and Muslims. The Indian soldiers refused to use these cartridges and revolted against the British in 1857. Non-Cooperation Movement. Shocked by the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre 1919, Gandhiji now demanded total freedom from British rule. Gandhiji launched the Non-Cooperation Movement in 1920. He asked people not to cooperate with the British government. People left their jobs, colleges, homes and joined the struggle and refused to cooperate with the British. People disobeyed British laws and stopped cooperating with the British government in India. Khilafat movement. The First World War broke out between a few European countries in 1914. When the war ended in 1919, the countries who lost the war were forced by the winning countries to sign a treaty. According to this treaty, the losing countries had to give away some of their territories to the British and also pay money to the countries who won the war. The British and the Ottoman Empire fought each other in the First World War. The British made the Caliph, head of the Ottoman Empire, sign a treaty which took away his powers. The Caliph was respected by the Muslims across the world. The actions of the British made the Muslims angry, causing them to organize protest. They started the Khilafat movement, which demanded that the powers of Caliph should be given back to him. Revolt Act. The aim of enforcing this act was to abolish revolt and uproot conspiracy against the British from India. In 1919, Gandhiji gave a call for satyagraha against the Revolt Act. that the British had just passed. The act curbed fundamental rights such as freedom of expression and strengthened police powers. The Revolt Satyagraha turned out to be the first all India struggle against the British government, although it was largely restricted to cities. Gandhi March. To control the trade in salt in India, the British had introduced a tax on salt production in 1930. Gandhiji led a movement to produce the salt without paying the tax. He organized the Salt Satyagraha March, popularly known as Gandhi March, which started from the Sabarmati ashram in Ahmedabad. Gandhiji, along with his followers, lead a procession from Sabarmati ashram in Ahmedabad to Dandi to break salt law. Upon reaching Dandi, Gandhiji picked up salt from the sea and broke the salt law. Why this march? In 1930, Gandhiji declared that he would lead a march to break the salt law. According to this law, the state had a monopoly on manufacture and sale of salt. Mahatma Gandhi, along with other nationalists, reasoned that it was sinful to tax salt since it is such an essential item of our food. That's why Gandhiji led this march. Quit India Movement. The Quit India Movement, translated into Indian language as the Leave India Movement, also known as the August Movement, was a movement launched at the Bombay session of All India Congress Committee by Mahatma Gandhi on 9 August 1942 during World War II, demanding an end to British rule in India. The struggle for independence had now begun all over India. Gandhiji asked the British to quit India. All Indians were called to do or die in their struggle for freedom. Civil Disobedience Movement. The observance of the Independence Day in 1930 was followed by the launching of the Civil Disobedience Movement under the leadership of Gandhiji. It began with the famous Dandi March of Gandhi. On March 12, 1930, Gandhi left the Sabarmati ashram at Ahmedabad on foot with 78 other members of the ashram for Dandi, a village on the western sea coast of India at a distance of about 385 km from Ahmedabad. They reached Dandi on 6 April 1930. There, Gandhi broke the salt law. It was illegal for anyone to make salt as it was a government monopoly. Gandhi defied the government by picking up a handful of salt which had been formed by the evaporation of sea. The defiance of the salt law was followed by the spread of civil disobedience movement all over the country. Making of salt spread throughout the country in the first phase of the civil disobedience movement. It became a symbol of the people's defiance of the government. Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. In 1919, the British introduced the Revolt Act. According to this act, any person could be arrested and put in jail without a free and fair trial. On 10 April 1919, many Indians assembled for a peaceful meeting to protest against the Revolt Act at Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar. Thousands of men, women, and children were part of these meetings. General Dyer, an officer of British Army, blocked the only exit of the Jallianwala Bagh and ordered his men to open fire at the ground. Thousands of people were killed during the firing. This incident left the entire nation shocked. After the end of Second World War in 1945, the British realized that they could no longer suppress the freedom movement, so they agreed to leave India and transfer the power of the government to the Indians. However, these led to the division of the country into two parts, India and Pakistan. India became independent on 15 August 1947. Jawaharlal Nehru became the first Prime Minister of India. Rajendra Prasad became the first President of independent India.